Hello, Marvel fans, comic geeks, and all the nerds in between. My name is Megan, and I'm here with another character breakdown today. And today I want to talk about a character that I think has such a rich past, a rich history in Marvel Comics, but they never get the credit that's due to them. So today we're going to talk about Dazzler. So, Alison Blaire, aka Dazzler, first appeared in X-Men number 130 in November of 1979 and was created by Tom DeFalco, John Romita Jr., and Roger Stern. Judge Carter Blaire, Alison's very strict father, had one big dream for his daughter, that she would follow him into the wonderful world of law. Unfortunately for him, Alison had other plans, namely singing. Carter didn't exactly understand why his daughter wanted to chase a music career, and with Alison's mother supposedly dead, the one person in her corner was Grandma Bella, who felt for both Alison and her widowed son. Bella eventually convinced Carter to let Alison attend a junior high dance that happened to include a talent show. Alison took the stage, and that's when things got very sparkly, very, very quickly. Her mutant light powers suddenly kicked in, creating a completely wild light show that the kids absolutely loved. Then a gang decided to crash the party, and Alison discovered another fun little feature of her powers. She could blast people with light. The resulting flash was so intense that everyone was blinded, meaning no one actually realized the kid on stage was responsible. Probably not the weirdest talent show finale ever, but it's definitely one of the more memorable ones. Alison made it through junior high and high school while juggling music, mutant powers, and the usual teenage stuff. After graduating magna cum laude from her pre-law program, she finally told her father that, despite all his hopes and dreams, she wanted to pursue singing instead of becoming a lawyer. Carter was furious. He walked off, and Alison packed up for New York City to chase her own dreams. So what exactly can Alison Blaire do? As a mutant, Alison Blaire can turn sound into light, with louder sounds producing more powerful effects. At first, she mostly used this ability to create spectacular light shows, but she soon learned that she could also use it to blind people. Eventually, her powers got a serious upgrade, though. Holograms, distractions, hard light weapons, and blasts of light that can shoot from her fingers, hands, eyes, and apparently just about anywhere else she feels like firing them from. Between her X-Men training and years of surviving superhero chaos on Earth and in the Mojoverse, which I freaking hate Mojo, Dazzler also became a surprisingly tough fighter. She has a particularly impressive talent for getting herself into situations where death seems pretty likely and then somehow showing up again anyway. Losing, apparently, is just an extended intermission. Alison's first big outing as Dazzler didn't quite go according to plan. Cerebro detected her mutant abilities, which brought Cyclops, Phoenix, and Nightcrawler to the underground club where she was making her debut. Alison came out swinging, or more accurately, singing, showing off her impressive voice and flashy powers. Then the armored soldiers of the Hellfire Club showed up and ruined the gig entirely. Dazzler responded by unleashing such an insanely powerful burst of light that she basically shut down one attacker's brain. After the other mutants dealt with the remaining Hellfire Club goons, Dazzler agreed to help rescue their teammates and assist another new mutant, Kitty Pryde. Once that mission was over, Professor Charles Xavier, offered her a spot with the X-Men. Alison thanked him, but politely declined because, as far as she was concerned, performing was a lot more fun than getting punched in the face by supervillains, which, we all have our preferences. Before her next gig at the Hellfire Club, though, she somehow ended up meeting a time-traveling Iron Man and helps him save the future. So much for staying out of superhero business, but when the streets call, you answer. That wouldn't be the last time she got dragged into it. Johnny Storm once showed up at the Discotheque Infinity while Alison was scheduled to perform and stepped in when some guy was harassing her. The two hit it off pretty well, but Johnny had to take off when an emergency call came in from the Fantastic Four. Around the same time, the villainous Lightmaster used Dazzler as a living power source to resurrect himself. He eventually took control of her, forced her to attack Spider-Man, until our favorite webhead managed to figure out how to snap her out of it. Dazzler's superhero adventures kept piling up, although her regular life wasn't exactly going smoothly either. Spider-Man happened to swing by while she was dealing with some goons belonging to her crooked manager in an alley. Meanwhile, Alison was several months behind on rent in her 6th floor walk-up in New York. Basically, mutant superpowers? Excellent. Financial stability? Not so much. Eventually, she called the X-Men for help, but when Storm asked whether she was ready to give up singing, Allison realized she honestly didn't know. She ended the call and decided to spend some time with friends in the country while she figured things out. Then Beast showed up with an article about a local disco called Numero Uno that needed a singer. Allison auditioned, absolutely crushed it, and even beat out the Enchantress for the job. Naturally, this meant she also made a powerful new enemy in the process, because apparently getting a singing gig in the Marvel Universe can never just be a normal Tuesday, it always comes with something else. From there, Dazzler's music career and superhero career both took off. She reunited with Johnny Storm, met the rest of the Fantastic Four, fought Doctor Doom, teamed up with Spider-Man again, and even answered Moondragon's call to join a new group of the Avengers. She also left that situation about as quickly as possible because she apparently had places to be. Her adventures only got weirder from there. Dazzler teamed up with Kazar, briefly becoming a Herald of Galactus, fought Terrax, dealt with Rogue when Rogue was still trying to take her out, and eventually turned herself in after being accused of taking out Claw by converting his sound energy into light. Thankfully, the courts found her not guilty, allowing Allison to get back to her usual combination of saving the world and trying to maintain a music career. And I have to say, I feel like that whole court situation in our world would really be good publicity. That's just what I think. And that was just the beginning. She would go on to cross paths with She-Hulk, Angel, who she briefly dated, Dr. Octopus, the Absorbing Man, and plenty of other heroes and supervillains. For Alison Blaire, apparently the formula was pretty simple. Sing some songs, shoot some lasers, fight a supervillain, survive something that should absolutely have killed her, and somehow still make it to the next gig. But Alison's life somehow found a way to get even messier when she discovered that her mother, Catherine, wasn't actually dead at all. She was alive and living under the name Barbara London, which is already a pretty big family bombshell. Then Alison learned she had a half-sister, Lois. Because one surprise relative just was not enough, throw in a half-sister. Things got seriously dangerous when Lois discovered her own mutant powers, which allowed her to kill someone with a single touch. After accidentally taking out a man who approached her, Lois understandably freaked out and went looking for Allie. Allison responded by doing what any loving sister would do in a completely chaotic situation, packed up her stuff, and moved them both to Hollywood. After releasing the hit album Sounds of Light and Fury, Allison found herself picking up all kinds of jobs, going from music video star to one of Millie's models to a roller derby all-star. Basically, she was collecting careers like Pokemon. But, unfortunately, not all things last. Things took a turn when she publicly revealed that she was a mutant. The resulting anti-mutant backlash absolutely wrecked her career. And it stuck with her career as well. Beast headed out to La La Land to check on Dazzler, and the two clearly had a connection. Unfortunately, things got complicated, and especially after getting tangled up with a group called the Gladiators, and the pair eventually went their separate ways. With anti-mutant sentiment making it nearly impossible for Allison to land a major headlining gig, she started taking smaller jobs instead. One of those was working as a session singer for Lila Cheney, the intergalactic rock star and friend of the New Mutants. Naturally, Allison managed to get caught up in another mutant mess when the New Mutants were split apart by the Gladiators. Dazzler went back to the Gladiators to help the young mutants rescue their friends. She even found herself enjoying the crowd's enthusiastic reaction while performing on their stage, but ultimately decided that bringing a whole group down was more important than enjoying the applause. Then things got properly cosmic. During Secret Wars 2, the Beyonder dragged Dazzler into his orbit and brought her to his space apartment because he was trying to figure out this whole love thing. Allison was initially interested, but that enthusiasm faded once she realized that Beyonder was basically an absurdly powerful cosmic being who could just do about anything. Still, when the Avengers appeared to attack him seemingly out of nowhere, she did try to defend him. Even after gaining cosmic awareness, Allison rejected the Beyonder's advances, which led her to have a brief and extremely awkward encounter with death. The Beyonder brought her back, briefly messed with her mind so she believed she loved him, and then eventually let her go. So I guess, even cosmic entities can't handle rejection normally. Still determined to make music work, Allison dyed her hair black and went on tour as a keyboard player for Lila Cheney's band. Then, because it's Marvel Comics and people cannot have just normal tours or normal lives, their plane crashed. Allison used her powers to cut a hole through the wreckage, helping everyone escape. The band continued afterward, but Allie became increasingly unhappy playing backup instead of being the star. Eventually, Malice slipped into her mind and pushed those frustrations to the surface, encouraging Allison to embrace her desire to get back in the spotlight. Allison eventually took over one of Lila's shows, stormed off, and started performing at a club in Denver. While there, she used her powers to amplify the negative emotions of the wealthy yuppie crowd, turning the whole place into a near frenzy. Wolverine, Storm, Rogue, who is now a hero, and Psylocke showed up to warn her about the Marauders during the mutant massacre, only to discover that Dazzler was already busy turning the audience into an angry mob. The real problem, of course, was Malice. She took control of Dazzler, forced her to attack the other mutants before jumping between their bodies. Eventually, Allison and the X-Men managed to stop her. Afterward, Dazzler finally accepted the X-Men's offer and officially joined the team. After all those years of saying she preferred singing to superheroics, she had finally been dragged into the superhero business for real. Dazzler joined at a pretty eventful time, too. Almost immediately, she found herself dealing with the Fantastic Four and Doctor Doom, fighting over the Kate of Kitty Pryde, getting caught up with the Avengers and Soviet superheroes over Magneto while he was serving with the X-Men, and even going toe-to-toe with Mephisto. Because joining the X-Men apparently came with absolutely no orientation period. She just jumped right in, first day. When she wasn't dealing with world-ending threats, Allison spent her time training on Muir Island and getting to know her teammates, which included Rogue, Longshot, Banshee, and Psylocke. She grew especially close to them after they helped her out following a solo fight with Juggernaut that left her completely wiped out. Together, they managed to stop Kane Marco, who is Juggernaut, in the middle of his rampage. The team, with Wolverine along for the ride, also stopped the Marauders from capturing Madeline Pryor. Dazzler even managed to take down a Polaris, who was being controlled by Malice all by herself. Somewhere along the way, she and Longshot became particularly close, and the two eventually started dating. And I actually think that was probably her best relationship. Her and Longshot made sense, I think. A lot of sense. Since things weren't dramatic enough already in her life, then came the fall of the mutants. Dazzler and the X-Men faced the Adversary, a demon that Forge had accidentally unleashed years earlier. To defeat it, Forge performed a spell using the souls of the X-Men themselves, banishing the Adversary but killing the entire team in the process. Freaking Forge. Luckily, a deity named Roma took pity on them and brought the mutants back to life. She also gave them a couple of very useful perks. They would no longer show up on surveillance equipment, and they received the Siege Perilous, a mystical artifact capable of judging the worth of the souls of anyone who passed through it. So, standard post-death superhero benefits. After Dazzler helped her friend OZ out of trouble, she and the X-Men battled the Reavers, sent the captured members through the Siege Perilous, and relocated to their old base in the Australian outback near Gateway, an aboriginal mutant who could teleport people across vast distances. Very useful mutant to have in your pocket. The whole situation was a little depressing for Allison. She had to keep her family in the dark about the fact that she was alive, and living in the Australian outback wasn't exactly a glamorous rock star lifestyle that she had once imagined. Still, there was no shortage of work. Dazzler and the X-Men fought off a brood invasion, infiltrated the magistrates to rescue kidnapped mutants, and got caught up in an evolutionary war. At this point, Allison had officially gone from aspiring singer to mutant superhero, cosmic adventurer, occasional dead person, and Australian outback resident. Her career path had really taken some unexpected turns. But that's showbiz. During Inferno, demons Nastor and Sim tried to bring hell to Earth by creating a permanent connection between our reality and Limbo. Well, I guess Marvel's reality. But pretend we're in Marvel right now, so our reality. Because apparently Earth needed more problems, they decided to pull this scheme. Madeline Pryor manipulated Dazzler and her teammates into hunting down the Marauders in exchange for getting her missing son Nathan back. Nathan is the son of Madeline Pryor and Cyclops, and he becomes Cable later in life. in case you guys didn't know. While still under Madeline's control, they also ended up fighting X Factor before finally breaking free and taking down Naster. During the final showdown, the ridiculously powerful Prior forced Dazzler and Longshot to attack Archangel. Thankfully, they eventually snapped out of it and joined everyone else in taking down the Goblin Queen, who was Madeline Prior. Once Inferno was over, Dazzler helped clean up the enormous mess that was left behind by the Marauders and Mr. Sinister. If you were wondering what Mr. Sinister had to do with all this, he's the one that cloned Jean Grey and created Madeline Prior. Everything about Madeline Prior, where she gets with Cyclops, she has a baby with him, who becomes Cable. She doesn't know she's a clone. All of that is Mr. Sinister's doing, so if you didn't know. After dealing with all of that literal hell nonsense, Dazzler, Storm, Rogue, and Psylocke decided they deserved a little downtime and had Gateway teleport them to the Hollywood Mall. While shopping and blowing off steam, they met a brand new mutant named Jubilation Lee, who would soon become the X-Man known as Jubilee. Later, Alison looked into the Siege Perilous and got a glimpse of several alternate versions of herself. In one life, she was a massive superstar. In another one, she was a mother. And in other one, she was just homeless. Unfortunately, every single version ended with a horrific death, because apparently the Siege Perilous had absolutely no interest in showing her anything uplifting, which says more about Dazzler's life than the Siege Perilous. Alison barely had time to process that nightmare before Master Mold attacked. The gigantic Super Sentinel seemed nearly impossible to stop, so Dazzler used the Siege Perilous to open a portal and blasted Master Mold through it. The only problem, Rogue got sucked in there too with him, which is like, oops. After an especially brutal mission against Zaladane in the Savage Land, Gateway brought the team back to their Australian base where Lady Deathstrike and the Reavers were waiting to ruin everyone's day, which is what they do. Before the Reavers could attack, the 4 remaining X-Men, Dazzler, Colossus, Psylocke, and Havoc, talked about using the Siege Perilous to end this version of the X-Men once and for all. They all agreed to go through it and just see what happens. For Alison, she ended up in Malibu. Specifically, she literally washed up on a beach and was discovered tangled in seaweed by Lila Cheney's boyfriend, Guido, who would later become known as Strong Guy. Alison survived, but there was one pretty major problem. She had no idea who she was. She had no memory of herself, and that's pretty rough. Meanwhile, a young director named Fred Stanachek had purchased the film rights to the Dazzler movie Alison had made during her Hollywood days. He wanted to restore and release it, but couldn't convince a major studio to finance the project. By sheer coincidence, Alison and Fred met at a party and immediately hit it off. Unfortunately, keeping Dazzler's return a secret didn't last long. The media discovered she was alive after she stopped an attack at a jazz club where she and Fred were hanging out. The news attracted the attention of Eric Beale, an obsessed lunatic who became determined to assassinate Alison. He tried several times and failed every single time. At the same time, the studio suddenly became interested in Alison's story again and agreed to restore and release the movie. At the premiere, Alison finally ended Beale's attacks, not by blasting him into next Tuesday, but showing him compassion. Couldn't be me. Should have blasted him. Alison continued staying at Lila's beach house until Longshot suddenly teleported back into her life. She didn't remember him, but that didn't stop the two from getting thrown into another dimension almost immediately. Alison, Lila, and Longshot ended up in the Mojo-verse, where she helped Longshot fight Mojo's forces. When Longshot was captured, Alison returned to Earth to ask the X-Men for help. Mojo and his minions attacked, however, dragging everyone back to the Mojo-verse, which is, I cannot think of a worse punishment for anything you've done than going to the Mojo-verse and hanging with Mojo. If Mojo has no haters left, I am dead. Alison explained that fighting alongside Longshot had started bringing back pieces of her old memories. After being separated from the battle, Dazzler woke up alongside Mojo 2, a freedom fighter who wanted to overthrow the original Mojo, but it's like, how many Mojos do we need? Just take out the first one and we're good. Alison managed to get close enough to Mojo and attack him, which also helped break Longshot free of the mind control Mojo had placed on him. Once the dust settled, Professor X dropped a pretty enormous bombshell on Alison. She was pregnant. Later, she showed up to offer the X-babies a chance to live with her and Longshot, only for Jean Grey to discover that she could no longer sense another life inside of Alison. Eventually, it turned out that Alison really had carried the baby to term and given birth. During a time-traveling adventure, Richter and Shatterstar of the X Factor actually witnessed and helped with the birth. But while Alison was asleep, Shatterstar revealed that he needed to erase both Dazzler and Longshot's memories of the baby and send him 100 years in the future. Why? Because the baby was actually Shatterstar himself. Yes, the family tree has officially become a pretzel. Back in the Mojoverse, Longshot became the temporary leader, although several factions, including Mojo 2, were still fighting over control. When Mojo tried using Wolverine to revive the entertainment industry, Dazzler and Longshot jumped in to help their new friend. Then came the prophesized 100-Year War. Mojo captured Cable and Shatterstar, while Longshot headed back to Earth to get help from X-Force. Dazzler stayed behind in the Mojoverse and kept fighting. Eventually, the combined forces of the Resistance and X-Force stopped Mojo's plans and even managed to trap him between Earth and the Mojoverse when he attempted to transmit himself from one reality to the other. Dazzler eventually returned home battered, exhausted, and dealing with the aftermath of Mojo's ex-baby versions of the Age of Apocalypse villains going completely off the rails. And I gotta tell you, that was probably the weirdest sentence I've ever said. They had destroyed huge portions of the Mojo world and may have even killed Longshot. Unfortunately, Alison didn't have much time to process any of that because Jean Grey and her hastily assembled team had to rescue Professor X from Magneto. Alison joined them on the mission. Furious over what Magneto had done to Xavier, she unleashed a massive energy blast at the Master of Magnetism. Magneto redirected her own attack back at her and seemingly killed her. Except that was actually part of Jean's plan. Alison wasn't actually dead. Jean wanted Magneto to believe he'd killed her so she could take Xavier's place and give Jean an opening to rescue her mentor. After all of that chaos, rather than immediately going back to the Mojoverse, Dazzler decided to focus on her music career again and moved to England to dive into the electronic music scene. She performed in her disco gear and quickly discovered that the glamorous music life involved a lot more than flashy lights. She dealt with a bored audience, lousy pay, pretentious scenesters, shady club owners, and, because this is Dazzler's life we're talking about, evil versions of the original X-Men who seemed determined to murk her. She might have actually ended up dead if the future members of Excalibur hadn't shown up to investigate. Captain Britain, Kitty Pryde, and Rachel Summers eventually helped bring Alison back to the land of the living. Before the team had even officially become a team, they were already fighting Shadow X versions of Beast, Cyclops, Iceman, Jean Grey, Angel, and Professor X, all created by the Shadow King, who is just a constant menace. From there, the new Excalibur team really started coming together. Dazzler teamed up with Pete Wisdom, Sage, Nocturne, Rachel Summers, a reformed Juggernaut, Kitty Pryde, and Captain Britain to form a new group, all while the mutant population had been reduced to roughly 200 people. Dazzler and Nocturne, Nightcrawler's daughter from another dimension, hit it off thanks to their shared love of music, motorcycles, and performing. Alison also developed a pretty unique friendship with Kane Marco, who was Juggernaut. Juggernaut had always been a huge Dazzler fan, even back when the two were busy trying to beat each other senseless. He's been a fan from day one. As a team, Excalibur battled with the Warwolves, Black Air, Black Tom Cassidy, and the Shadow King. They even traveled through time to help save Camelot from alien dragons. Alison especially loved that adventure because she had grown up loving stories about the Knights of the Round Table. And she had actually got to perform for King Arthur, Merlin, and the rest of Camelot. Not exactly something that was going to happen at a normal concert, but at a Dazzler concert, everything's on the table. Alison also started performing at much fancier venues where she caught the attention of an A&R representative from Vestal Records. He wanted to make a demo with her, but Alison turned him down because she wanted to focus entirely on performing live rather than going back into the recording business. Then, during a mission to help Juggernaut deal with the Gem of Sidorak, Nocturne finally lost her patience with Alison. She accused Dazzler of being a fame junkie who was taking advantage of Kane's crush on her and refusing to make it clear that nothing romantic was ever going to happen between them. Harsh, but not exactly coming out of nowhere. Alison eventually let the argument go, especially after Nocturne suffered a stroke. At that point, Dazzler cared more about helping her friend and teammate recover than holding on to something hurtful that had been said during a heated moment. After everything Allison had been through already, dead X-Men, alternate lives, memory loss, cosmic weirdness, mojo, time traveling babies, and enough career changes to fill a LinkedIn profile, she was still managing to find a little humanity in the middle of all the chaos. And of course, there's always more chaos because this is Marvel Comics, this is the X-Men, this is Dazzler. After finally taking down the combined forces of Black Air, Lionheart, Shadow X, and Albion, the team decided to celebrate with a party. Things between Allison and Pete Wisdom got pretty spicy, at least until Captain Britain got shot in the chest and instantly ruined the vibe. Brian's sister Psylocke, who, Betsy Braddock, who was working with the Exiles at the time, teleported her badly wounded brother to the team's headquarters, the Crystal Palace. There, Allison was stunned to see Longshot again, and even more stunned when she realized he had absolutely no memory of her. The heartbreak hit her so hard that she considered unaliving herself. While the rest of her teammates were busy fighting James Jaspers, Allison stayed behind to stop the person that shot Captain Britain, which was Rogue Mort, from finishing off the already wounded Roma. Then Longshot showed up and seemed to suddenly remember Dazzler. Naturally, Allison got distracted. Rogue Mort took advantage of it and knocked both her and Longshot unconscious. When they woke up, it looked like Longshot was finally starting to remember his life with Allison. So this was a lot. Unfortunately, things still didn't work out between the very confused Longshot and Dazzler. Allison eventually decided to leave not only him, but England entirely, heading for Utopia, the mutant island off the coast of San Francisco that Cyclops and the X-Men had set up. The flight over was already eventful when she got into a fight with Man Mountain Marco, because even flying to your new home has to come with a boss battle if you're an X-Man. Back with her original team, Allison tried to cheer up Pixie after the young mutant was beaten up by the Hellfire Cult. She also helped fight the Skrulls during their secret invasion and started performing again in San Francisco Mission District. One night out with Pixie and Northstar took a turn when the Sisterhood attacked and caught them unprepared. Dazzler later joined Emma Frost and the other X-Women in taking down the Sisterhood and rescuing Psylocke. On Utopia, Allison battled the Dark Avengers and the Dark X-Men, witnessed Magneto's turn toward the side of the good guys, and even had a pleasant reunion with Longshot. Things got considerably darker when Selene used the Technarch transmode virus to resurrect dead mutants, surrounding herself with an inner circle that included Dazzler's own sister, Mortis. Allison didn't go with the X-Force when they eventually took down Selene, but she did have a brutal and heartbreaking confrontation with Mortis, who told her that she hated her. Sisters. After Necrotia, Allison tried tracking down her half-sister Lois, only to end up caught in one of Arcade's murder traps at Mortis' request. Lois made things even worse by bringing in Claw, giving Dazzler a rematch with the villain that she had defeated years earlier. Allison managed to beat both Claw and her sister, then brought the unconscious Mortis back to Utopia and called her mother to explain what had happened. Because Dazzler apparently wasn't allowed to enjoy a quiet afternoon, the horrors continued. She fought vampires during the Curse of the Mutants event and later returned to Limbo. That happened after Cable and Hope returned from their time-traveling adventures. When Magic went to retrieve them with a team, she was blasted back into Limbo. Allison agreed to help rescue her alongside Pixie, Anole, Gambit, Cannonball, Northstar, and Trance. While fighting through a horde of demons, Dazzler and Northstar were taken over by the death entity that had possessed Gambit. Thankfully, Magic and Pixie managed to purge the entity from Gambit, freeing everyone and allowing the group to return home. The X-Men then took another huge hit when Wolverine left after Cyclops called on Teenage Mutants to help defend Utopia from the Sentinels. Most of the mutants either picked a side or walked away completely. Dazzler stayed with Scott Summers, who is Cyclops, especially after he offered her a San Francisco-based job leading the local street team alongside Boom Boom and Lifeguard. Then came another reality-hopping adventure where Allison answered Cyclops' call to help open the ghost box. Once they succeeded, Allison found herself teamed up with the alternate reality versions of Wolverine, Nightcrawler, Professor X, and Emma Frost. Their mission was to hunt down evil versions of Charles Xavier across different universes. Their first stop was the Bronze Age-style world where mutants were worshipped as gods. Allison wasn't exactly impressed by the whole bow before us routine and showed the mutants just how powerful she could be when she shrugged off their attacks. She might have done even more damage if Emmeline Summers Frost hadn't stopped her. Later, Allison used her singing to push their leader Storm into such an intense emotional state that the weather goddess ordered the deaths of dimension-hopping intruders. It turned out Storm and the other mutant gods were being controlled by an evil Professor X, whom Dazzler helped defeat. When Emmeline decided to stay behind on that world, Allison became the leader of the multiversal X-Men, although their Professor X still managed to call a lot of the shots. I realize that a lot of you won't know who Emmeline is. Or is it Emmeline? Emmeline? I'm going to say Emmeline. Emmeline is an alternate version of Emma Frost that actually married Scott Summers. So, Emmeline Summers Frost. They hyphenated. She led the team through a bunch of bizarre realities, including a steampunk Wild West world and a robot-controlled universe where their young teammate, Kurt Wagner, who is another version of Nightcrawler, was in danger. Dazzler and James Howlett, which is another version of Wolverine, saved the boy, and Allison also reunited with her former Excalibur teammate, Sage. She fought the Brood, battled a hardened alternate version of herself for leadership of the growing team, and watched the group expand to include Hercules and a Civil War era version of Cyclops. After defeating the Witch King Xavier, the alternate Dazzler transformed into pure light and faded away. Allison picked up her alternate counterpart's gear and wore it during the team's final mission, including a Nazi version of Professor X. After they won, their own Professor X announced that the multiversal hopping mission was finally over. Then someone counted the evil Xaviers and realized they had missed one. Allison confronted their Charles and discovered that he had accidentally teamed up with two other evil versions of himself. The team defeated them and rescued their Xavier just before everyone decided that maybe constantly jumping between realities was a terrible idea. Unfortunately, their adventures weren't quite finished. Dazzler and the team landed in Age of Apocalypse universe, where they witnessed energy-eating monsters being unleashed thanks to all of the different teams and individuals bouncing between dimensions like reality was some kind of open-door policy. Stuck in the Age of Apocalypse world, Allison worked with the others to find and restart the Apocalypse seed, only for multiple layers of deception to eventually put it in the hands of a very untrustworthy dark beast. Eventually, the Age of Apocalypse version of Jean Grey absorbed the power of Apocalypse and became ridiculously powerful, more powerful than usual, and that's saying something. Dazzler demanded that they find another solution when she learned the plan involved sending everyone back to their home universes and trapping the energy-eating monsters inside the Age of Apocalypse reality. Even though she hated the idea, Allison eventually returned to her own reality while Age of Apocalypse Nightcrawler sealed the dimensional portal. Impressed by what she'd done, Wolverine offered Dazzler a place at the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. Allison asked for some time to think about it because even after surviving multiple universes, she still wanted to carefully consider her career options. Then Maria Hill created a mutant task force inside of S.H.I.E.L.D. to figure out exactly what Cyclops was planning with his mutant revolution and whether Magneto was actually on the side of the Angels. She recruited Dazzler for the job. Allison's first assignment was to interrogate Goldballs. I'm sorry, I'm a child. Allison's first assignment was to interrogate Goldballs and find out where Cyclops and his team were hiding. Unfortunately, Cyclops and the X-Men showed up, took the new mutant with them, and accused Allison of betraying mutant kind. This accusation gets thrown around a whole lot in the X-Men world. It's like every other week someone is accused of, you betrayed mutant kind. And it's just such a big thing to say, I feel like. It's just so excessive. Then things got really nasty. Allison was drugged and replaced by Mystique. Raven Darkholm, who is Mystique, took Dazzler's place inside S.H.I.E.L.D. and used Allison's unconscious body and Madripoor to grow and extract mutant growth hormone. Magneto eventually discovered what was happening while tracking down the MGH-addicted Blob. MGH is mutant growth hormone, in case you didn't know. He rescued Alison and brought her back to Cyclops' new Xavier school after promising to help her get revenge. Once the immediate threat of war with S.H.I.E.L.D. had passed, Dazzler quit the organization and recommitted herself to Cyclops' team. After discovering that Mystique was basically impossible to track down, Alison snapped. She cut off her hair, ditched her costume, and apparently decided that if she couldn't find Raven, at least she could dramatically change her look. Rebranding is a thing. Not long after, the X-Men from both sides came together for the reading of Charles Xavier's will following Cyclops' killing of him. The whole thing gave Dazzler and her old flame beast a chance to reconnect. Although things got incredibly awkward when they discovered that Xavier had apparently married Mystique, which was weird. Still very determined to get Mystique, Alison made a deal with Maria Hill. If she helped bring Mystique in, she would wipe the records of everyone at the new Xavier school from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s files. With the deal approved, Alison worked with Cyclops to capture Mystique and turn her over. To celebrate, she returned to the stage and performed publicly for the first time in quite some time. Then reality itself decided to break again during Secret Wars. A version of Dazzler lived on an island called Arcadia, where she teamed up with the other superpowered women as part of the A-Force. When reality was eventually reset, some people remembered fragments of what came before, including Singularity, who knew Dazzler and her teammates even though they no longer remembered her. Despite the memory problem, Dazzler teamed up with Medusa, Captain Marvel, She-Hulk, Nico Minoru, and Singularity to fight antimatter. When the others caught up with Alison, she was playing roller derby in Miami while trying to figure out what she wanted to do with her life. That suddenly became less important when antimatter nearly killed her during the battle. After Singularity visited Alison in the hospital, Dazzler recovered surprisingly quickly and jumped right back into the fight. The team defeated antimatter, although their victory caused even more dimensional rifts. Naturally, that meant even more bizarre things started to crawl through, so the group stayed together to deal with those too. They traveled to Oregon to fight a shape-shifting villain called the Countess, only to encounter another Dazzler along the way, Dazzler Thor from Battleworld. Dazzler Thor was a vibe. I was into it. During their conversation, Alison admitted that she was dying from exposure to the Terrigen Mist. Dazzler Thor had also been exposed to it while falling between realities and was even further along in developing Mpox. During the final fight with the Countess, Dazzler Thor died. R.I.P. Alison then had to tell her teammates that she was suffering from Mpox too, because what's one more thing that she has to suffer through? Just add it to her resume, I guess. When Captain Marvel needed to head to New York City to prepare for the beginnings of Civil War II, Dazzler and the rest of the team went along to back her up. That led directly into the battle with Thanos that left War Machine dead and She-Hulk in a coma after the Inhuman Ulysses had visions of the future. Alison strongly disliked Captain Marvel's beliefs that people should be arrested before they actually committed the crimes, especially after Ulysses had a vision that Nico would kill a girl named Alice. Despite their disagreements, everyone managed to work together long enough to save a Colorado town whose citizens had been transformed into giant bug monsters. And that's just a nightmare. Dazzler eventually patched things up with Medusa despite their rocky relationship. She also used her holographic powers to disguise herself as Lady Shine, a singer performing at Black Bolt's Quiet Room Club. She teamed up with Emma Frost to attack the former Inhuman King and knocked him out. Alison later survived a full power attack from Black Bolt and searched the sewers of New York for Jean Grey before Jean's return. Inspired by Dazzler Thor and her star-powered hammer Lightbringer, Alison started a new punk band called Lightbringer. The group promoted solidarity between mutants and Inhumans because I guess Dazzler decided that what the Marvel Universe really needed was more punk rock diplomacy, and I have to agree with that. I'm here for that. After a show in Brooklyn, Alison ran into Colossus, who asked whether she wanted to return to the X-Men. Once again, she thanked him but declined, choosing instead to keep touring. During another tour, this one celebrated her first album, Alison met up with Havoc, Warpath, Colossus, Beast, and Banshee. They were actually there to recruit her stage designer, Forge, but Dazzler ended up getting pulled into another X-Men adventure when the Office of National Emergency attacked and captured her and several others. Havoc teamed up with the Reavers to rescue them, but accidentally gave the Reavers the ability to take over technology. They used that power to merge themselves with Sentinels and attack Dazzler and the X-Men. Alison, being Alison, responded by creating convincing holographic duplicates of the team and fooling the Sentinel Reavers into attacking the wrong targets. The group barely had time to breathe before discovering that the Reaver Sentinels were planning to attack the Xavier Institute in Manhattan's Central Park. To stop them, Dazzler absorbed enormous amounts of sound energy from Banshee's uncontrolled screams and converted it all into absolutely massive blasts of light, destroying the Sentinels. When one arrived at the school, the group knew they needed to get out. They escaped on a plane, but Havoc asked Dazzler to help him get everyone to safety while also helping him turn himself in. Alison agreed. She intended to break free afterward and prove that she could be a hero entirely on her own, but then Jean Grey called for help against a dying X-Man who had taken over Legion's body and his Horsemen of Salvation, which is Storm, Blob, Magneto, and Omega Red. Dazzler joined the fight, only to seemingly die alongside the other X-Men who were there that day. Instead of being the end, however, her death helped kick off yet another reality, the Age of X-Man. Because when you're Dazzler, apparently death isn't an ending. It's just another career transition. And considering everything Alison has survived, hell, alien dimensions, alternate universes, memory loss, cosmic entities, vampires, demons, sentinels, family drama, in several questionable career choices, and enough superhero disasters to fill a dozen resumes, it's always safe to assume that she just doesn't stay gone forever. And when she does come back, there will almost certainly be music, mayhem, and at least one ridiculously bright explosion waiting for her. So, of course, you see where we're going with this. She is alive. In reality, Dazzler and the missing X-Men had been dumped into the Age of X-Man, an artificial reality Nate created using a life seed. Nate is X-Man, by the way. Their memories and identities were rewritten so they could happily accept his supposedly perfect society where romantic and emotional relationships were basically illegal. Because obviously the key ingredient in a perfect world is banning people from having feelings. Romantic feelings, at least. In this new reality, Alison became one of the X-Tracks, a revolutionary group led by Murshid that opposed the laws against love and personal attachment. She still performed as a singer, because even dystopian mind control universes can't keep Dazzler off the stage. But she was pulled away from a concert at the Bright Disease to meet the group at the Gilded Tomb. There, she took part in the Perfect X, a psychic communion created through Unveil, and later joined the Light Riders on a mission to Kazakhstan to rescue Omega Red. So her alternate reality resume now included singer, revolutionary, psychic communion participant, and Omega Red Rescue Squad member, amongst so many other things. As Nate's supposedly flawless world started falling apart, Alison and the other displaced mutants slowly remembered who they really were. Once Nate finally admitted his artificial reality couldn't last, Dazzler was allowed to return to the real world with her memories restored. Back home, Alison became a citizen of the new mutant nation of Krakoa. During the celebration, after first meeting of the Quiet Council, she teamed up with Siren to put on a giant light show for everyone on the island. Later, she helped X-Factor rescue mutants being held prisoner in Mojo World by performing as the lead singer of a band alongside Lila Cheney and a young mutant DJ. The whole concept was basically one giant musical distraction while the prisoners were freed and Mojo's operations got wrecked. Among those rescued was Shatterstar, which, if you'll remember, is Alison's biological son. But thanks to the absolutely bananas time travel circumstances surrounding his existence, she still had no idea that was actually her kid. The X-Men world is messy. While living on Krakoa, Alison regularly performed at the Green Lagoon and was scheduled to play at the first Hellfire Gala. She also got into frequent arguments with Dr. Nemesis, mostly because he insulted her music and handed out experimental drugs like a guy operating the world's sketchiest pharmacy. Eventually, they made up and even shared a dance. Later, Dazzler got infected by Onslaught and nearly manipulated into taking part in the planned Crucible massacre. Pixie managed to free her, and Allison then helped lure the affected mutants through the gateway to Arakko. After temporarily returning to Los Angeles, Allison discovered that her boyfriend Alex had been cheating on her. And because apparently regular relationship drama wasn't sufficiently awful, she also found out that Alex was a vampire and the grandson of Dracula. Alex drugged and kidnapped Allison, Jubilee, and Boom Boom, forcing the three women through a series of deadly trials before they eventually reunited with Wolverine. They discovered that Alex was working with the Collector, who had been keeping the women and other captives prisoner above the ship. The four women teamed up as the Exterminators, fought their way through the whole mess, freed the prisoners, and escaped back to Krakoa. They avoided punishment by proving that the vampires they took out were actually defectors from the Vampire Nation. With Dracula's approval, Dazzler later returned to Los Angeles with Alex's former captives. She legally bought the property where Alex's bar had been located and then promptly destroyed the place anyways. Meanwhile, Jubilee, Boom Boom, and Wolverine dealt with the Collector. At the third Hellfire Gala, Dazzler was elected to be on the new X-Men team. Unfortunately, the celebration lasted like 5 seconds before Orcus launched a devastating anti-mutant attack. Most of the newly elected X-Men, including Allison, were killed by Nimrod. But once again, death failed to get the message. Allison was later resurrected alongside the other elected X-Men by Ascani to help Charles Xavier map Myra McTaggart's 10th life. The plan was to find the exact moment before Myra's powers emerged so Xavier could travel back in time and take her out as a child, preventing Enigma from ever existing. Dazzler then joined Cannonball, Frenzy, Jubilee, and Prodigy as they traveled through timelines generated by the Myra engine in search of a human version of Myra whose memories they could map. Allison helped the team survive several hostile realities, although she admitted she was worried because they couldn't rely on her bizarre ability to somehow resurrect herself every time death came knocking anymore. When they finally confronted the cyborg Myra, Allison was struck down while protecting Prodigy. Fortunately, she was revived by absorbing nearby sonic energy and helped the team defeat her. Back in the White Hot Room, Allison opposed Xavier's plan to kill Myra as a child. She argued that destroying Krakoa's history could also erase all the new lives and relationships and opportunities the mutant nation had created. Dazzler wasn't wrong in what she said, but in the end, Krakoa was done anyways. So it's like, y'all might as well have just taken her out. It's fine. But what did take down Krakoa, as we get into the fall of Krakoa, a multi-pronged assault by the anti-mutant human organization Orcus, internal betrayals by the Quiet Council, and overarching threats from Machine God and Dominion entities. It was big. It was bad. And that was the end of Krakoa. After Krakoa fell, Dazzler released a successful new album and launched a worldwide tour celebrating both her career and her mutant identity. Her touring crew included Domino, Strong Guy, Multiple Man, Shark Girl, Wind Dancer, among others, because apparently Dazzler's tour bus had basically become an X-Men spinoff in its own right. Naturally, the tour immediately attracted anti-mutant sabotage. Scorpia attacked Allison's opening concert and revealed that someone had unanimously paid her to shut the tour down. Then in London, Allison was mind-controlled during a televised live performance, causing her powers to injure people in the audience and make the public even more convinced that she was dangerous. In Tokyo, Allison performed with Lila Cheney before Arcade ambushed them with an entire collection of deadly traps. The attack caused more destruction, awful publicity, and even more canceled tour dates. Somehow, Dazzler still managed to finish the tour with a massive final concert in New York City. Mayor Luke Cage and Congresswoman Stevie Hunter officially declared it Dazzler Day to recognize Allison's support to the mutant community. During the celebration, Allison discovered that the attacks had actually been orchestrated by a rogue duplicate of Jamie Madrox, who is Multiple Man, who had infiltrated her own touring crew. With the help of her allies, she defeated him, finished the tour with a gigantic light show, and doubled down on using music to build mutant pride and resilience. Unfortunately, surviving an international tour featuring murder attempts, mind control, supervillain death traps, and Madrox clones probably isn't great for the old mental health. Alison continued struggling with anxiety over everything that had happened and even starting losing her hair. Still, she agreed to headline a huge concert with Lila Cheney and K-pop star Luna Snow. Naturally, the show was hijacked by the evil metal band Deep Void and a Doombot. They used the audience and the live broadcast to summon an interdimensional demon through a giant mass sing-along. With help from Luna, Lila, and concert goer Ghost Spider, who is Gwen Stacy, Dazzler pushed through her fear of performing, defeated Deep Void, and helped send the demon back on its own dimension. Dazzler later headlined a free concert in Chicago as part of the Hellfire Vigil, performing with Shark Girl and members of her touring crew to honor Krakoa. But of course, the authorities decided that this was the perfect moment to make everyone's night worse. One forces and Wolfpack Sentinels attacked the venue and tried to arrest Alison for reckless endangerment relating to all disasters surrounding her world tour. Instead of abandoning the crowd, Alison kept performing Last Krakoan Dream, the name of the song, while her band and security team tried to keep the authorities at bay. Eventually, Dazzler was subdued with Blight's will and arrested, ended up in Grey Malkin prison. Months later, Alison was among the prisoners freed when the Louisiana X-Men and their allies stormed the facility and brought the whole place down. And that's all we know. She was in Grey Malkin prison. That was destroyed. It wasn't really destroyed, but like all the bad guys are gone. All the mutants were released like a month ago, 2 months ago, I think. And now we don't know what she's up to, but I really want to know. I want her to get her own series. It's fine. At this point, Dazzler has survived artificial realities, memory wipes, cosmic weirdness, vampire boyfriends, mutant nations, resurrections, Myra McTaggart's timelines, international assassination attempts, mind control, arcade traps, Madrix clones, demonic karaoke, and prison, amongst so many other things. And somehow, through it all, she kept still making music. And honestly, at this point, the only thing more powerful than Dazzler's light powers might be her refusal to have a normal career. And that's something I've always appreciated about Dazzler. Many times with the mutants, there's going to be ones that are like, I want to be a villain. I want to be a superhero. I want to do this. I want to be something amazing. And Dazzler's always just said, I just want to be a famous singer. And I love that for her. I think that's awesome. And she goes at it again and again and never drops that goal. So she's pretty cool. So thank you for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and I hope you will like and subscribe. With that being said, have a marvelous day.